everybody. They don't have to agree with you all the time. You have to have a heart for them, and you have to be on their side. And eventually, you might win them over, but it doesn't matter. This is about service. Principle-centered leadership, applying conservative principles the right way, will reform the things that are broken in this country so that more people have a chance to rise up. That's what I believe in my heart, and that is the passion I have for running for president. And I believe we can grow our way out of many of these problems that we face. The other thing that's so important, that is really creating real dangers today, is the lack of leadership in the world. America is extraordinary. It's an extraordinary country for all sorts of reasons. But one of the reasons is when we lead in the world, we create peace and security. And when we pull back, bad things happen. It's happened in history, and it's happening right now. Today, in Syria and Iraq, there is a caliphate. I never in my mind 5 years ago, or 4 years ago, or frankly 2 years ago, would have thought that a caliphate controlled by barbarian Islamic terrorists would exist. But it does. And it does, and it persecutes Christians. It will kill Christians if they get their hands on them. They will destroy Muslims that don't adhere to this radical orthodoxy that requires them to follow a script that is not in the teachings of Islam. They're barbarians. They've announced that their objective is to send the black flag of ISIS in the White House. They're grandiose, of course. They've got a fairly bold agenda here. But the simple fact is, as it stands, they're winning, and we're not pushing them back. And they get recruits each and every day. Their energy comes from the fact that they exist, and we're allowing it to happen. And we allowed ISIS to be created when we pulled back way too fast as it relates to Iraq. There was a forces agreement ready to be signed, and the President and the Secretary of State said otherwise. They said, no, we're not going to do it. I think President Obama wanted to fulfill a campaign promise. Fine, campaign promises should be fulfilled. But when you're the commander-in-chief and leader of the free world, and you pull back like this, voids are filled. And that's what happened. And the net result now is, instead of having a fragile but stable Iraq, we now have an Iraq on fire. And its neighbor, Syria, the exact same thing. You remember the red line? Do you remember when the president committed to supporting the Syria Free Army and then started calling them pharmacists and doctors and dentists or something like that? By our pulling back and not being true to our word, the voids were created in Syria as well, and now we have mass upheaval. Out of 23 million people that live of the Syrian population, 11 million have been uprooted. Now, this is not all the responsibility of the United States, but when we pull back, when we're part of the community of nations rather than being a leader of nations, we see the result. When I'm commander-in-chief, if I'm privileged to win this election and serve, we will restore American leadership in the world. Our friends will know that we have their back, and our enemies will fear us a little bit. This president has this tendency that is deeply disturbing to me that says if you don't agree with him, whatever it is, that somehow you're a warmonger in foreign policy. Or if you don't agree with the Iranian deal, which, by the way, will make the efforts to take out ISIS far more difficult because of Iran's sponsorship of terrorism, Shia terrorism in the world. If you don't agree with that deal, the net result is that you're part of the Death to America crowd. You're in cahoots with the Death to America crowd. Well, my friends, he's negotiating with the Death to America crowd. He's doing that. The Death to Israel crowd, the Death to America crowd. He's giving up the ability, the leverage we have to make sure that they don't secure a nuclear weapon. He's not negotiating in anything related to their ability to have missile defense capabilities, which they're buying from the Russians, ballistic missile capability, which they'll continue to develop, conventional weapons capability, which they'll now have with the release of the sanctions, the oppression of their own people, and 3 American hostages, innocent Americans that are held hostage in Iran for no reason. This is the wrong deal, and I hope Congress rejects it, and if I'm elected President of the United States, I will make sure that Iran never gets the nuclear capability to do it. Look, I don't think that sounds bellicose. I believe that is the traditional bipartisan foreign policy that has led the world. That's what we need to restore. Everything shouldn't have a D or an R by its name. It wasn't that long ago that peace through strength was a value that almost all Americans believed in. If we're a confident country, if we grow again, if people believe their future is going to be bright, if they believe their children will have more opportunities than what they have, then they will commit to American leadership in the world, because that's how we create peace and security for our own homeland. And I'm committed to that. The final thing I'll say, and then we'll open it up for questions, is that I'm going to run a different kind of campaign. I hope you've seen it as it starts. I have joy in my heart. I'm not a grievance candidate. I'm not angry. I'm not going to fake anger. I love this country. I believe we're on the verge of greatness. I'm frustrated, like you are, that the system isn't working, that our government's not working on our behalf. But there's no reason to be paralyzed by anger. There is no reason, because if we fix these things, we'll lead the world for a long, long while. So I'm going to campaign with joy in my heart. I'm going to campaign in a way that hopefully will draw people towards our cause. I'm going to campaign to win. I'm going to campaign in every place I can to spread this message that's more hopeful and optimistic. I'm not going to try to demonize what people think if they don't agree with me. I'm going to run a campaign that draws us together and unites us. I'm going to campaign like this rather than like this. And I believe that if you support a campaign like this, you're looking at the next President of the United States. Thank you all very much.